Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for this interview for ANΤ1 TV. We are expecting to welcome you to Cyprus in a few days, and this is the occasion for this interview. What will you carry with you in your suitcase coming to Cyprus in terms of strengthening and expanding bilateral relations between Israel and the Republic of Cyprus?
Friendship, a lot of friendship. We've built a partnership over the last decade that is changing the Eastern Mediterranean. We forged a partnership between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, three democracies in the East Mediterranean who didn't really have this kind of cooperation before. This cooperation includes energy, it includes security, includes tourism, vast tourism. It includes fighting terrorism. It includes electrical cables that we're trying to push. And of course, the big question of natural gas, I think, is uppermost in all our minds. Many, many areas, actually every area.
Talking about the discussion for natural gas, are there any news on how the technical committees, the two technical committees, proceed in their contacts concerning electricity and natural gas?
Well, that's going to be a big part of the discussion. But we are now in the, Israel has found natural gas with reserves for export. Cyprus has reserves. Obviously, we want to cooperate. There are various ways that this gas could be exported to Europe and to other destinations. We're looking at a number of possibilities. We haven't made any decisions. One of them is the East Med pipeline that would go through Cyprus and through Greece and then through Europe. That's one possibility.
That's a long-term plan, though.
It's a big investment. It's a long-term plan. That's one option. There are other options. There are several options. We haven't decided. This is an economic question that has to be looked at the numbers, at the feasibility, and we're going to discuss that among other things.
And what about the discussion concerning Aphrodite and Yishai fields? Are there news in that direction?
Same. This is all part of the energy question which we're looking at. We're looking at it in a regional context because this involves many possibilities, actually 4 possibilities that are being discussed, and I think it'll take a bit of time, but we have to come to a decision. And one of the reasons that I welcome this opportunity in this summit is to be able to discuss some of the possibilities that involve Cyprus.
Okay. You yourself have also spoken about how this trilateral summit can be extended. You talked about an Eastern Mediterranean alliance that would include, for example, the United States. Are there any news to that direction?
We already brought the United States into one of our conferences. And I'm sure, first of all, they support it. They very much support this association, this alliance, and I'm sure that they'll continue to support whatever conclusions we have, whatever steps we're talking about, because they're in favor of this, and they'll continue to be in favor of it.
So no news to be expected soon enough?
Well, I think that we'll brief them. They know what we're doing, and we're keeping them informed. I think this is part of the changing world. It's very important that we have an anchor. We have an anchor of stability, an anchor of security, an anchor of prosperity and development, and that's not going to change. I mean, whether or not, we normalize relations, as we hope, with many of our neighbors, including Turkey, by the way. The relations between Greece and Turkey have improved. The relations between Turkey and Israel have improved. But this doesn't in any way change the solidity and the importance of the relationship between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. That will continue no matter what.
Talking about Turkey and your relations, you were supposed to visit Turkey. Yes. It was postponed. Is there a plan to proceed with such a meeting and a visit soon enough?
Yes, it was postponed because of medical reasons, which I'm happy to say are behind us. So yes, I will go to Turkey and we'll discuss regional issues as well. But I think this is part of the changing face of the Middle East and our region, and it's a welcome one. We all welcome improved relations. But I think, again, there's an alliance here that is grounded on common values, our common democratic values, and a common history. We have a lot of shared history between the Jewish people and Cyprus, the Jewish people in Greece. I think Western civilization is in many ways an amalgamation of Judaism, which was forged in Jerusalem, and many of the Western tenets of civilization that were forged in Athens. In many ways, Cyprus was the meeting ground of these two cultures. So there's a very deep foundation here for this friendship, and it's real and it's enduring.
Okay. The people of Cyprus are well aware also of the strategic defense partnership between Cyprus and Israel. We know there's not a lot of talk, but there's a lot of action to that direction. Any news in that field?
It's a growing relationship, and I think it's an important one. We have cooperation in military exercises. We have cooperation on fighting terror. There's been a publicized incident of where our intelligence agencies foiled with Cypriot police an attempted terrorist attack on the soil of Cyprus. There are other things that are not reported, which are important. I think it's in our common interest to stop terrorism, and our cooperation has enabled us to do it. So yes, we're cooperating in the security field, military and anti-terror. We'll continue to do so. It's just growing all the time.
I would like to ask a question on an issue that is of great concern for the Cyprus people, and it has to do with a number of Israeli businessmen investing in the occupied northern part of Cyprus. And actually, there is information that lots of them are doing business with Iranians. There are a number of 20,000 Iranians in the occupied area of Cyprus now. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, we don't have a policy of limiting Israeli business people. They can go anywhere in the world, and they do. We have one limitation. You don't go into an area that is into a country or an area which is at war with Israel. That we stop. So we don't limit their decisions, their business decisions. One thing we do limit by law, in fact, it's the only law that I passed in my years in Parliament, is to do business with Iran. I'm not aware of any such business dealings, but since you raise it, we'll look into it.
Okay, thank you very much. Following on the Abraham Accords, which Israel has signed with a number of Arab states, how satisfied are you with the evaluation of those accords so far?
I think it's been a sea change. It's been a world change. I mean, we've gone from having two peace agreements. The first one, historic one, with Egypt, between Prime Minister Begin and President Sadat, and then with Jordan, King Hussein. Then for a quarter of a century, we had nothing. And I'm very proud of the fact that my government was able to forge, with American assistance, peace treaties with 4 Arab states, Gulf states, Morocco, and Sudan. And we think that there's room to bring it up to a higher level, even to expand the Abraham Accords. And that's very, very good, not only for us and for our Arab neighbors, but I think it's very good for the region. It creates economic possibilities, vast economic opportunities that didn't exist before. And I think everybody will benefit. I think Cyprus will benefit from it.
Do you see a role for Cyprus to those accords, actually?
Possibly, yeah. There are some ideas about energy corridors and other things that might be of interest. But in general, I think that when you normalize relations, you bring security, stability, and prosperity, everybody in the region enjoys it.
Talking about expansion of those accords, there is discussion on how maybe you can proceed with such an agreement, a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. But there were talks about difficulties to that direction. How are things now, and what's your comment on what happened with the plane with Israelis coming back to Israel and that was forced to land in Saudi Arabia?
We are working with the American government and with the Saudi government about the possible normalization in peace agreements. That's something in discussion. There are important issues to be resolved, but it's important to note that we already have a measure of normalization with Saudi Arabia, because even before the Abraham Accords, Israelis were already flying over the airspace of Saudi Arabia to the Gulf states. Now we go through the entire airspace to go through to Asia. And this is an amazing change. I think what happened with the Israeli passengers on this plane bound from the Seychelles to Tel Aviv is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I mean, this plane, we're very happy and very appreciative of the way that the Saudi authorities took care of this plane and these Israeli passengers who are now on their way to Tel Aviv had landed in an emergency landing in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Warmly received, warmly treated. This is the sign of the time, the change of times. If I told you 10 years ago that a plane full of Israelis would land an emergency landing in Saudi Arabia, people would have been nervous. But I'm not nervous today. We weren't nervous today because we knew of this friendly attitude, this warm attitude, this gradual normalization of relations. That is a very good sign. Good neighbors is a very good sign for the region.
Discussion on expanding accords, and I understand there are discussions going on secretly as well. There was news in the past 24 hours about a secret meeting between the foreign minister of Israel and Libya. The disclosure of such a meeting, is it helpful to your direction of?
Well, it wasn't helpful now, that's clear. And you have to understand, this is an exception to the rule. There have been just innumerable confidential contacts made between Israel and Arab leaders, Muslim leaders. In fact, many of them took place in Cyprus. The government of Cyprus has been very helpful over the years, very hospitable and very discreet and confidential in enabling these meetings, including some that led to the Abraham Accords. So if you didn't know that up to now, I'm telling you that. But we were very careful to not to reveal this in advance of time. And in fact, I'm not even telling you now the details of these meetings. So I think this was an exception. I've issued a directive to all our government ministries that such meetings of this kind have to be cleared in advance with my office, and certainly their publication has to be cleared in advance with my office. So, because it's very important to maintain these discrete channels which eventually can blossom and flower into open relations, but not necessarily in an uncontrolled way. In fact, necessarily, they shouldn't be publicized in an uncontrolled way. This was an exception. We'll make sure it's one of a kind.
Okay, and just a final question. With all due respect, I would like to hear you talk about what's happening within Israel in the past months, and your plan with the amendments in the judiciary system. All this turmoil with the people, how do you plan to gain people's trust back? And proceeding with your plan as well, because we've heard you say that you will proceed.
Well, I've already done a great deal by holding off on legislation, even though we have a majority, seeking to achieve a majority, or not a majority, seeking to achieve a consensus, preferably with the opposition parties, and if not with the opposition parties, then with the public, or at least with a large part of the public that would agree to the measured steps that we take. What we're trying to do is basically restore a balance between the three branches of government, the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive, and that's something that is a fundament of all democracies. In Israel, that balance has been taken off the rails by a very activist judiciary that is not common in just about any of the democracies on earth. So we're trying to restore that balance somewhat. I'd like to do that through as broad a consensus as I can. That's what we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.